Hello friends, let's break down the legislative drama in sunny Poland. President Karl Nawrocki signed a package of laws ranging from a ban on phones in schools to gender quotas. At the same time, the government is tightening the screws on migrants, cracking down on sub-businesses, and preparing new tricks with mortgages. Let's discuss everything now. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel right now, and check your notification bell, friends. Friends, huge thanks to everyone who doesn't hold back. It only takes 2 seconds, like to support aerodynamics, like to support the working class. Friends, thank you for your support. Well, let's get down to business. Let's look at what legislative documents the legendary President Karl Nawrocki has presented to the public. On July 30th, 26, a grand ceremony took place in Warsaw. The head of state signed 5 laws at once in one go. One of them was then sent to the Constitutional Tribunal for revision. It's an interesting and telling story. Here we have a classic example of how a modern bureaucratic state tries to balance between the demands of the European Union, public pressure, and the interests of big capital. So now let's break down this package of initiatives point by point. For your convenience, there will be timestamps in the video, so thank you very much for, well, you know. So the first law, the law on smartphones outside of school. We need to save the children. Let's start with the most high-profile law that caused the biggest public reaction. We're talking about amendments to the education law. Yes, this is the law on education. The essence of the innovation is simple. Starting from September 1st of this year, that is in a month, an official ban on the use of mobile phones and any similar gadgets will be introduced in Polish primary schools and kindergartens. In kindergartens, they can't even be brought into the building, and in schools the ban applies not only during lessons but also during breaks and at off-site events. What does this tell us? Public organizations, for example, the Institute of Civil Affairs. See, and teachers have been shouting at the top of their lungs for a long time. The younger generation has simply drowned in digital noise. Write in the comments, friends, if you have school kids in Poland, do you think they spend too much time on their phones or not so much? So, teachers say that attention spans are at 0, academic performance is dropping, and during breaks, instead of socializing, everyone just sits on their computers, phones, and gadgets. Of course, the lawmakers made exceptions if the phone is needed for the learning process as directed by the teacher. If a child has health problems, for example, if they need to monitor their blood sugar for diabetes or in case of an emergency. But overall, the trend is obvious. The government is trying to use administrative measures to force children out of virtual reality. And come on, dear school kids, get back to regular schoolwork. Next, the second law, the fight against the tyranny of bosses, right? The second important document, I believe, is the amendments to the Labor Code and the Civil Procedure Code. Here we are talking about tightening and simplifying the rules for combating workplace bullying. Dear Ukrainians who work in Poland, who are working hard in factories, in warehouses, write in the comments, and not just in warehouses, at any workplace, do you experience workplace bullying, or is it somehow very different for you? I read all the comments. Until now, proving in a Polish court that your bosses or colleagues are, let's say, psychologically destroying you has been next to impossible. Now the legislator has simplified the very definition of mobbing. It includes systematic actions. These can be physical, verbal, and even non-verbal. Moreover, the minimum amount of compensation has been raised, and the employer now has a direct obligation not just to respond to cases of bullying, but to have a clearly documented system for its prevention. If the employer fails to brief or formalize regulations, the company will be fully liable in a lawsuit. This is a direct response to the growing anxiety, let's call it that, in the labor market, where burnout and corporate tyranny have become widespread phenomena. By the way, this obviously doesn't just apply to foreigners, because Poles themselves have had a record number of L4 sick leave forms year after year, especially in the last 3 years. People are taking sick leave to recover from burnout, meaning professional exhaustion. Next, the third point, the European Union's gender quotas, signed it and sent it to court. So, with this document, the amendments to the law on public offerings and European standards of equal treatment. Nawrocki played a real game with this. That's it. This law implements the European Union directive on so-called equal representation of women and men on the boards of directors and supervisory boards of large public companies. This is the well-known EU directive Women on Boards. What did Nawrocki do? He signed the document citing the Constitution's articles on gender equality and women's labor rights. I'm for progress and justice. But right away, without delay, he sent it to the Constitutional Tribunal for subsequent review. His reasoning is a masterpiece, but that's Mr. Carroll for you. He says, like, I sympathize with the law, but the wording contains gross legislative errors, violates the freedom of enterprise, the principle of proportionality, and will generally kill the competitiveness of Polish business. You might ask, Dencik, what did you just say? We didn't understand. So here's a plain language translation. The president reassured those reformers sitting in Brussels and the feminist electorate with his signature, yes, but he passed the actual enforcement of the quotas to the courts, so that big business wouldn't tie its own hands with such strict regulations. Like, what, we have mostly men in some companies, so we're just supposed to hire women just because we have to? No, well, you get the idea, right? All right, let's quickly go over the fourth and fifth laws. These are about water and charity. So, the remaining two laws are amendments to water law and changes to the law on public benefit, volunteering, and the gambling business. There was no drama here. These are just classic administrative tweaks and adjustments. The water law adjusts issues of managing hydraulic infrastructure and water use, which is extremely relevant in conditions of drought and floods, by the way. And what about the law on volunteering and gaming? To redistribute targeted contributions from the gambling business in favor of non-profit organizations. In the end, we see a quite logical picture, right? The Polish authorities are trying to patch up social gaps at the same time, for example, smartphones in schools, arbitrariness at work, and to maneuver around these tightened EU directives, while of course protecting the interests of big business. How this will work in practice, time will tell, but for now we will keep watching how things develop. Yes, friends. It's the perfect time to check if you've liked this video. Hit the like button if you haven't already and subscribe to the channel. So we have two more news stories. The Ministry of Family, Labor and Social Policy of Poland has decided to be vigilant and tighten the screws on the migration front. A regulation is being prepared that will decisively block citizens of sunny Georgia and the equally sunny Colombia and Venezuela from, let's say, relatively free access to the Polish labor market. How it used to be and how they want to change it. Previously, citizens of these three respected countries could come to Poland without a visa, quickly get a permit or declaration, basically just a declaration, and voila, that's it. You're already working for the benefit of the Polish economy, making money for the capitalists, and they'll even throw you a little something. But now the government says, no, citizens, that's it, we're shutting this down. If you want to work, you have to get a national visa at the consulate. Just like Ukrainians did in 2015 when Denis Lukyanov came to Poland, he stood in the consulate, got a national visa, and now you will have to do the same. Well, there they will examine you under a microscope for migration risks. The official reasoning given by the authorities is, of course, absolutely rock solid. By the way, we are fighting against illegal immigration and abuses. In 2025, 39,000 work permits were issued to Colombians, and then 6,700 people underwent inspection. And it turned out that 1,500 of them are staying in the country illegally, and another 1,700 were kicked out with an order to leave beautiful Poland. Well, in general, the statistics are rather disappointing, and then Polish entrepreneurs rush onto the scene and start shouting. You can understand them. Canceling easy recruitment schemes is obviously a blow to their wallets, a direct hit. And the businessmen say directly, damn guys, this is our situation. Poles don't want to take these jobs. They don't like the salaries. They don't like the conditions. They say it's too hard. They say it's not suitable for them. The new rules will stretch the hiring process out for a month, and the workers might just go to other countries instead. All this bureaucracy will completely jam up the already overloaded Polish consulates. But the main trump card that business tries to use against the officials is money. Employers have already sat down, done the math on a calculator, and put out the numbers. They say that if, because of visa barriers, Poland comes up short by, well, there's a range here, 15 to 20,000 foreign workers, then the country's budget will instantly lose from 375 to 875 million zlotys a year. So just imagine, if we take the upper limit, 25,000 workers don't come, that's 875 million zlotys a year in the form of taxes and social insurance contributions. It's a beautiful picture. Officials are trying to show strict border control to bring order to the reports, and the capitalists are tearing their hair out because the cheap labor is slipping through their fingers. It leaves a hole in the budget and unfilled shifts at factories and construction sites. Well, let's see who wins, strict bureaucracy or financial interest. Now they're going to clash. And one last thing, friends. more economic tricks that the wonderful, remarkable, kind, and smart Polish government is preparing for its citizens. What do you think they want? They dream of having a home of their own. The Ministry of Development and Technology of Poland has announced a new initiative. It's a project to help those who don't have their own home. The idea behind it is as follows. The aim is to help people save for at least a mortgage down payment. That's the program's plan. The bank gives the citizen a regular consumer loan specifically for the down payment. So you see, some people don't even have, let's say, 50,000 zlotys. That's 10,000 euros. A lot of them don't have that much money. And a government institution, the Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego, acts as a guarantor and provides a state guarantee for this. You might ask, what's the trick and where's the profit here? Deputy Minister Tomasz Lewandowski explains everything in the simplest terms. Right now, you don't have savings for a down payment, right? You're forced to take out a regular cash loan, and the rates there are outrageous, 14% per year. Well, maybe 12% if you're really lucky. Handling that on top of your main mortgage is a sure way to end up broke and in a debt trap. In the new program, interest rates for down payment loans will match mortgage rates, about 5.8, or 6.2%. Well, the difference is definitely noticeable, right? I mean, 6.4 is quite a high rate, isn't it? You end up giving the bank a lot of money. 14% is basically robbery. In short, here are the terms of the offer. Who can qualify for government assistance? Only those without land or a home. That means you shouldn't own an apartment or a house. The limit is up to 100,000 zlotys. The repayment period is from 5 to 15 years, and if a citizen overestimates their abilities and stops paying, the state bank won't hesitate, and they will collect the debt directly through housing cooperatives or social rental systems, TBS as it's called in Poland. Officials expect that by the year 2030, 30,000 families can benefit from this opportunity. Write in the comments, friends, would you like to have property in Poland? Are you planning to? Well, yes, as I said. At the moment, this is a bill in the preparation stage, so whether this beautiful initiative will turn into an actual law or drown in bureaucratic approvals, we'll see. But let's be patient. And let's keep following financial developments in Poland going forward. So you don't miss a new video, leave a like, write a comment, and hit the bell. It's important. All right, friends, a huge shout out to the entire working class, truck drivers, turners, and milling machine operators. If I didn't mention your profession, write in the comments what you do for a living. That's all for now. See you next time, to be continued.